everyone, and welcome to Let's Heal with Beth Jones. That's me, your host. My mission is to bring the power of healing to trauma and abuse survivors. That's why every guest on this show will bring you an amazing story of healing in action. So come on, everyone, let's heal.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Let's Heal with Beth Jones. Of course, we are in the series where we are honoring Child Abuse Prevention Month, and I have a wonderful guest today who has some really cool work that she does around helping us to prevent child abuse in the first place. My guest today is Kimberly King, who is an author. But Kimberly, would you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. So I'm Kimberly King. I am a sexual abuse prevention educator and advocate. I work with Darkness to Light and the SAPRIA organization. And I'm also an author of 3 books now on how to prevent child sexual abuse. And what I do aside from that is teach kindergarten, and I also have an online class for parents and kids on prevention to help parents learn how to sort of get past the fear about the topic and the overwhelm and the confusion so that they can like use these resources easily to protect their children. Because when we start early with body safety and prevention, it really is a whole lot easier. So that's kind of where I'm at the like early childhood space. So I help parents with young children and any child between the ages of like 3 and 10, that's where my resources focus, and then the parents of those kids.
I absolutely love the work that you do. And as you're
Thank
talking about
you.
that, yes, you're welcome. It's super, super important work, the prevention aspects of it as well, and helping parents to know what to do, to recognize the signs, and to help the children even know what to do. When you were talking about that in that age range in particular, 3 to 10, I can help thinking about my 5-year-old, who's one of my inner children that I've spent a lot of time healing, because she is the first one who was sexually abused, and that was the first time I experienced abuse myself. And I see her when you talk about children who are three.
Yeah.
I see her, and certainly in your work you do every day with kindergartners, you see
Yeah.
them every single day, and that must be a little bit challenging.
Well, it's challenging, yes, and it's interesting about how, when we try to empower kids to learn these strategies, there are research strategies that are proven to be effective in prevention. But we can't place that all on the kids, and I always say that to the parents, like, this is not just, like, give a book to your child, read it once, and think that they're gonna tell you if anything happens, so I just wanna be clear about that, because the responsibility to reduce the risk lies within the adults, and then I think we also have to empower our kids with some tools just so that if something happens, they're able to identify it and label their feelings and get help, but 68% of kids never tell anybody, so there is still a lot of work to do in both spaces.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. There is. I did some when I so I did a lot of the my healing journey began when I was in Hong Kong in 2020, and I joined a support group there that's called Talk Hong Kong, and it was just that to begin with, was a support group for
Yeah.
female survivors of sexual abuse, either as a child or as an adult. But
Okay.
that organization has gone on now, to where the founder, a woman named Tara Eger, who's actually going to be just another guest in this series around Child Abuse Prevention
Oh,
Month,
great.
she has a heart for prevention because being sexually abused as a child is also her experience, and so
Mhm.
she's really been on a mission there to do a lot around prevention. So I've learned a lot about the statistics around
Yeah.
the reality of the frequency of how often this occurs, and
Yeah.
there are the stats, the official stats out there, and organizations like the Darkness to Light, which I'm aware of through that work with Tara and talk around prevention. I think those stats are probably underreported in my own experience.
Yeah,
Certainly
exactly.
meeting people
There
in my work, I think it's almost everybody I've talked to has had some form of child abuse or and even child sexual abuse.
Yeah, I
And
know. It's every time I go to a conference or teach this topic, every single person in the room will come up to me and say, "Oh, I know someone," or "This happened to me," or I think the statistics are way underreported. Yeah.
yeah, your anecdotal studies, same as mine. My research is
Yeah.
tells me it's a lot higher than we think it
Oh,
is. It's,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah. I mean, and actually, and it's something that I didn't talk about publicly until I was in my 50s because I
Yeah.
didn't have my arms around what I had been through and how it had impacted me. So I didn't. So I'm really, the work that you do in particular around, educating the adults, I think is crucial and allowing a child to speak through their behaviors, even if they don't have the words, which was
Yeah.
I mean, when you're 5, what do you say to somebody when you're 5 about what you've experienced, right? You don't have the vocabulary to be
Yeah.
able to do that, but there are certainly signs, I think, in
Right.
children.
There can be signs, and a lot of kids don't have the vocabulary. And then if you're, being sexually abused by someone in the home or a nanny or, a stepfather, you can have, this incredible fear that something's going to happen to the family because, a lot of times these kids are threatened. And I talk about that a lot in my book. I don't know, did I send you a copy of the Body Safety for Young?
I have it. I've got it right here, and it's actually going to go up as a resource on my website because
Oh,
I
awesome.
love this book. So yes,
Oh,
so that's it for
yeah.
everybody who's watching, and if you're listening. The book is called Body Safety for Young Children: Empowering Caring Adults. That word "empower," I'm all about that.
Yeah, it's so important. And when I was doing the research for the book, I interviewed a number of survivors. I wish I would have known you. I could have for you. But what was incredible about it was the stories. And there's the story of my friend Sharia, who is in one of the later stories about how when her child was abused, the predator was a female, groomed the entire family, groomed her first and became this irreplaceable person in their life and trusted her and then groomed the school and then groomed the community and then went to the child. And it was just such a sad story, but eventually the minute that that nanny left the home, the child ended up telling mom and
Wow.
was scared to death because that nanny had threatened that she was going to kill the parents and kill the dog and just all this terrible stuff. So
Wow.
it's really, really tough, and it has taken, it seems like many survivors go into this work to help other people,
Yes.
and, she's one of them. I think there's like a giant pack of us that are
There
that are
is.
trying to help, just
Yeah.
sharing our stories, which is for
Yes.
me has been part of my healing, and yeah, so
Yeah, which we are going to come around to your healing journey and how you got here, but we're down this path now of talking about your work. So I'm going to
yeah,
keep you
yeah,
there for a little bit. So there is this book that is, the subtitle of the book we're just talking about is Empowering Caring Adults, right? So that's clearly a book that is for adults and really to teach adults about the reality of every human being who is important in your child's life that they're going to come into contact with. And frankly, they are risk factors. I mean, they are.
yeah,
I'm sorry, but
yeah,
that is the reality and the truth of it, right? And parents, adults who are
exactly,
around children need to know that for sure. But you
yeah,
also have some lovely books out there that are for the children,
for the
which
kids,
yeah.
yes. I
So
have
tell us about
I
those.
have this new one. I don't
Yes.
That's the I Said No to Hugs book. That is really for like a 3 to 6-year-old, and it teaches you how to find your voice and speak up for your body autonomy. It's not that we're teaching kids not to hug, that's not it. But it was inspired by my niece, and I always wanted a hug from her, and she just wouldn't give me one. And as a body safety educator and person in this field, I know I should be like, oh, come on. But I found myself doing that. And I'm like, okay, I just have to write about it and see what happens. So she would do all these cute things to evade my hugs, like hide and spin and twirl. And eventually, long story short, she ended up coming to me for a hug and asking me. And it was just like on her terms, which
Yeah.
is what we want. And then the other book, I don't know if I have a copy way back here. I do. I have got a bunch of extra copies of these guys. This is the original book I wrote, the I Said No book. And that book is being republished in September with a new publisher. And that's like a really comprehensive prevention
Mm,
book. It talks about the critical strategies I mentioned that have been proven to be effective in prevention. So they're all in there, and it's just cut up into little sections so that you can read that with your child, but just take like one topic at a time. Like one
Yeah,
topic would be like knowing the right body terms. Another one would be why we don't keep secrets, what bribes, threats, and treats look like, and what's the difference. These are the things we have to talk about.
yeah,
So yeah, and then I do the online body safety class, which is basically like this book, but it's me in my kindergarten teacher hat, like talking to a doll and singing and doing all this goofy stuff just to get the kids and the parents engaged enough and comfortable enough to see that it's not scary.
yes,
Like you can just do it, and it's actually light and not scary and fun in the online class. So
yeah,
yeah, I just want to make people comfortable so that they don't
yeah.
fear the topic.
Yeah, well, 'cause it's a really difficult
Yeah.
topic, and certainly if you're a parent trying to
And
speak
there's a
to
lot of
a child.
survivors on the planet that, so if you are a survivor, you're probably like, yeah, I don't want to touch that topic with a 9 foot pole, but then you're also like, I
Most
have to, you know?
most are that way. Then there's me, like you, like, oh, we gotta touch it, right? Gotta do something
Yeah.
about it. And that, I don't know. I mean, I spent years professionally before doing what I do now. Helping organizations to prevent fraud and
Ooh.
misconduct. Right. So there is a definite parallel to me, and I understand the power of prevention, which
Hmm.
is what you're all about. And
Yeah.
think about it. I mean, when I start to let my mind go about what we're preventing, I mean you know everything from the emotional toll to the physical toll to hurt people.
Yeah.
I mean, just what we are preventing just by saving one child from
Yeah.
having that happen to them is huge, right? And so you're not only, even as a parent, you're not just saving your child, but potentially a lot of other
Others.
ramifications when you're doing that, yeah, and other people. So it's
Yeah, I
really
was at a
important.
conference this summer where we kind of talked about that. It was at this John Hopkins Center for Public Health and Vision conference, and one of the speakers said, "We're not going to arrest our way out of this problem because there are so many people perpetrating these crimes that we just can't actually catch them all, and we
Yeah.
can't arrest them all. We have to, like, as parents, really buckle down on this prevention piece." And like now that we know the things that help prevent child sexual abuse and we know how to reduce the risks, like it's all here for us now. We didn't
Yes.
know all of this 20 years ago, but we know it now.
Yes, we do.
So that's what's like,
Yeah.
exciting to me is that, okay, we know this now. We can actually teach kids these things. Parents can literally reduce the risk drastically by taking a few steps. So that's
Yes.
exciting to me because I do feel like in our lifetime, there's going to be a drastic
I
reduction. I really do.
hope you are correct
I
about that,
hope so.
Kimberly. I really do. I feel the wave of awareness
Yeah.
increasing myself, and
Yeah.
awareness of the awful things, whether it's that or some other awful thing that we go to in terms of trauma and abuse that people are exposed to. I feel like the wave of that is increasing globally. So I,
Yes.
I, I hope and pray that you are correct about that for all the
I sure
children.
hope so.
Yeah, right. And I mean, I think about the stat. I was actually thinking about this morning when I was thinking about recording this with you today. The stat that's out there that, if you take the average stat, 1 in 4 children has been affected by sexual abuse. If you just take
Yeah.
that number and you apply it to the roughly 8 billion people that are on this planet, that
Oh,
is
yeah.
literally 2 billion children who have experienced.
Yeah.
The numbers are staggering, and of course, as we've talked about, it's probably higher than that,
Yeah.
right? They
And,
are
like, I
staggering.
don't n it's staggering, and then, like, recently, they just updated some of those stats to talk about child-to-child harmful behaviors,
Yes,
and so, like, that stat's gone through the roof for a variety of reasons. Like,
yeah,
one, kids are telling more, but
yes,
also it's, like, exposure to pornography, the cell phones, the Snapchats, the video games, like, all that stuff, and it's the cartoons that some of these cartoons that are online that kids can see, and it's trickling down into this behavior that gets repeated and kids don't even understand it, and it's just like whew, it's like out of control right now.
yeah, yeah, it is. I
So
agree with you. Reason why your work is so very important.
uh, yeah, I mean we're all in this together.
Yeah,
So
we are. I mean, I mean, I know from my own personal experience, or as I said earlier, I mean, prevention is ultimately,
yeah,
we got a long way to go toward preventing most of it, but we can at least start bringing the risk down, right? So
yes,
important.
absolutely.
So, the work that you're doing now, how did you get into this work?
Yes, interesting story. So I was a young mom and pregnant with my third child and married to a Navy fellow who was about to go on deployment. And I had the baby, he left, and then I had to go back to the hospital because Alex, my son, had jaundice. So I had to leave my two kids with my neighbor. And she was like, "Oh, well, let them sleep here. It'll be fine." And these are really, really good friends of ours. I knew them for 3 years, and our kids were besties and the whole 9 yards. So my kids slept over at the neighbors.
Mm,
I got a weird feeling when I was at the nursery doing all the jaundice stuff. Like I had a feeling something was wrong, but I kept telling myself, "Oh, you're just being paranoid. You're tired. You didn't sleep. The kids are fine." It was before cell phones, even. I mean, like I couldn't even text anybody. I did call, and my neighbor was like, "They're fine." But in the morning, my son, who was 4 at the time, when I came to the door, he just like ran out, jumped in my arms, and told me he had a red flag. He had a problem with his friend. And so all that I had said about this topic was that like, you got to keep your private parts private, and if anybody tries to touch you, tell mom, and that's a red flag. That's basically all I said.
mm, mm,
So he told me what happened, and it was kind of like a body boundary violation, like curiosity gone too far. Because there was manipulation involved and there were threats
mm,
involved. And
mm,
so,
mm.
not that anything tragic happened to him, but the experience of like getting blackmailed and threatened by his friend was really traumatic to him.
Yeah, that is, yeah.
So he told me, and then, I was super upset and wanted, like didn't handle the disclosure well, and, went over, and we had a conversation. That didn't go well. But the whole thing triggered memories for me from my childhood. So then I was like, "Oh boy, now what am I gonna do?" So I got a therapist. I started doing research on the topic and found, like, I'm a teacher, so I'm like, well, what books are there that I can read? What books are there that I can read to my son to help him? We went to therapy for my son, and that was just a joke. Like the guy fell asleep and listening to us, literally. He like was
Mm,
snoring. So I just was like, well, let me look. And there was
yeah.
one book that was really creepy, but there were no good books. So I'm like, well, I don't know, let's journal write. So my son and I started journal writing, and he was mad at his friend, and we just started talking about it and writing about it. And I realized that it should be a book because it could help other people. So
Mhm.
we took his journal, my journal, kind of worked together and made the I Said No book. So that's sort of how it started. And then I realized, I I have this passion for teaching. I love teaching kindergarten. So it was just a natural step to, learn about darkness to light and become certified as community educator. And I'm also a crisis counselor.
Mm.
So not this year, but I used to answer phone calls for local organizations here. And so it's just something I really find comfort in doing, just helping other people and sharing I say in the book, like sharing our mess, just like sharing the mess so that it gets across as a message to other people, and hopefully they can avoid it. So that's the short story about how I ended up writing the books.
Writing the book.
And it was interesting because back then nobody was talking about this topic at all.
Oh, no.
So to have it published by a real publisher, was one in a million. I mean, very rare that you get a offer on a children's book on a topic about private parts. Like, it's just not
Well,
normal.
I don't know what you believe spiritually, but I would say that that was the universe
I
intervening in how
Yeah,
important this topic is.
I think so, because I had people say to me, "You're never going to get that book published," and I sent it to 3 publishers, and I had 2 offers. So
That's amazing.
yeah, so
That's so cool because it needs to be out there. Yeah,
yeah, it does.
absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I also think that's really cool, what you were saying about both you and your son doing journaling at the time and you leading the two of you down that path. And of course, journaling is a common way that many of us are able to heal, because that's where you're pouring out your raw emotions privately.
Right.
It's where you're not hurting anyone else, right? So you
Right.
really can let loose in your journal, right? Which I have
Exactly.
experienced myself, right? There's some pretty crazy stuff in some of my journals.
Yeah.
Look at them. But how powerful is that to have that as source content, like the like real time reactions or real time emotions of what was happening to the two of you? That's cool.
Yeah. It was really neat. And what was cool about it, especially with my son, was like at that point he was 4 or 5. So he was drawing pictures and like maybe sounding out words, but he said in one of his journal pages that he felt tricked and he felt like the stupidest kid in the world. And so just like his language, I used that tone of the kid language in the book, which makes it way easier to read.
Yes.
As if you're a child, it's like approachable that way. It's just you can hear like a kid sass and a kid humor in it. So that's what's unique about it. So it's from his perspective. So it's like me and Zach, sharing our story, and it comes from Zach's voice, which is unique.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I do want to just take a moment to pause what you're sharing with us, because it's quite serious what both you and your son Zach went through. And of course, we're talking about the amazing outcome of that and turning the pain into purpose. But I do want to just pause for a moment on the pain of that, because I know it must have been very difficult for you and for him. And I hope that you're in a good place now, and I hope that he's in
Yeah.
a good place now.
Yeah, it was, I think for him it was just like he was upset that his friend, broke the trust and tried to say I'll never be a friend again. He wasn't like what happened was minor enough that he brushed that part off of it. But
Mm,
what hurt him was the friend the threatening of losing a friend. And then for me, obviously you feel guilty. Like I was like, oh my God, why didn't I go home that night? I didn't have to sleep. Blame yourself, and I just went spun out blaming myself. And I was just so upset with my neighbor and upset with everybody. And my husband was away, so it was difficult. It was a difficult time. But there's this pattern that I realized that I have because when I was remembering all this, I also remembered things from my childhood and then stuff bubbled up from college that had happened to me. And then I thought about it. Well, in college, after I had a sexual assault, I jumped right into working at the Women's Health Center with rape victims. Like I have this pattern of just like going to help and not dealing with myself, which I'm sure is not that uncommon. But
no, that's the comment, actually.
but I mean, finally I did, go to therapy and that's my route to healing was writing and helping others. And some people don't do that, and that's fine too. Like everybody has a really unique journey. Mine
Uh,
has been therapy minimum and writing maximum.
I've done maximum and maximum on those two, and maximum on a lot of other things too. So,
Yeah.
like, everything I can get to continue to work on my healing journey. I've progressed a lot, but I believe that each one of us is always going to be healing from something, because we are human beings, right? We are
Yes.
more
A
resilient.
hundred percent.
It's quicker, I think, when we respond. You said something interesting about Zach and the part that was more difficult for him than the actual event itself, but it was sort of what his friend did around the manipulation and
Yeah.
trust, right? And I have a similar experience. I was date raped in high school, and for me, it was the after effect that was much worse,
Yeah.
because pretty much everybody in school, including people who I thought were my friends, sort of abandoned me. And
Yep.
I experienced bullying as well from many, many people, including some of those so-called friends. And
Yeah.
really that bullying really, and that abandonment from people
Yeah.
was much, much more prominent in what I needed to heal related to that event,
Oh yeah.
series of events, than the actual event that started it all. Right.
Right. Exactly.
Because it's all about trust. It
Yeah.
is. Yeah. And that's so hard to get back. And, I guess part of what we're healing is, I mean, I tell people that we're healing so that we can get rid of the unhealthy emotions in our body that stop us from loving and being able to show up in loving relationships. And I think a
Hmm.
part of that is rebuilding trust and not having a fear that people inherently are going to hurt us. Right?
Yeah, and it's interesting because if you don't do that work, I think you end up picking the same people that keep hurting you.
I've
Uh,
been down that road too.
been down that road.
I think most of us who are survivors who haven't done the work to heal would say that same thing, right? Before
Yeah,
we're in a better place to
exactly.
really
Well,
to.
I'm happy to report that I'm 55 and I've made a good choice this time.
You know what? I'm happy to report that I'm going to be 55 this year, and I think I'm making a really good choice now. Finally, I've gotten to the
Yep.
place where I'm making one. So I'm in the same place. I don't know. Maybe it's a mid
Yeah.
50 thing, right? We get smart,
Yeah.
definitely, but
Yeah. You
I,
get to know yourself well enough and
yeah, take
you
our
just
power
know
back.
what you know your worth, you know what you deserve. And at this point, we're like, nah, we're not putting up with any of that nonsense.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I'm done with all that stuff I used to put up with. So yeah.
Yeah.
So you mentioned writing, writing more so than therapy as part of your healing journey, and so the journaling, and then also now the three books that you've written. But anything else in the writings?
Yeah, something that really helped me a lot was yoga. So I started doing just regular yoga, but then I fell in love with hot yoga and met all these amazing women and my teacher. And strangely enough, like I don't know, 75% of us have been through the same thing. And so in yoga, especially like trauma informed yoga, you can learn to love your body again and be comfortable with your body and like feel your feelings and get your head to just clear and meditate and all of that. So that was really helpful to me, and also running, just getting out of my head and just into my body helped me a
Yes.
lot. Yeah.
Yes. So movement is huge for me
Yeah.
as well. And I love being out. Nature is very soothing to me. So I want to be
Mm,
outside. Used to be
yeah.
running, trying to figure out whether or not my body's going to continue to cooperate with the running or if it just needs to be walking. But luckily for me, like that, whatever it is about that rhythmic cadence that you get into,
Yeah.
the intentional movement over some distance, I can put myself into a processing state. And so it's
Yeah.
almost like if you're familiar with EMDR and
Mhm.
trauma therapy, so I can put myself almost into that same cadence and that rhythmic
Yeah.
state where my mind will go crazy. And of course, when I was in the most intense and focused part of my healing journey, it was all about, processing the heavy, the ugly stuff that was going on in my head. And now it's much more, it's less therapeutic now, and it's much more about creativity. It's much more about like
Yeah.
getting my message out to people, like
Yeah.
how am I going to get my healing message out, right? Which I think is super
Exactly.
cool that the brain can use those same, can use those same tools, but in different ways.
Yeah. It's really incredible what the brain can do and when we
Yes.
integrate the mind and the body together,
Yeah.
just magic. My son uses he has trauma from some other things and some mental health problems, but he does that the meridian tapping,
Yeah.
and that's amazing. I just started doing that. I love doing that. It's so relaxing and
Yeah.
calming.
Yeah. It is that
So,
little bit of, I've not done very much of that, but being able to just calm the body, calm yourself
yeah.
through tapping, it is, I have to look into that one. So
Oh my
I'm
god, it's the best.
yeah, I'm exploring like a variety of different resources just so that I can introduce them to people. So
Yeah, you know who's
I need to
great
check
is,
that one out.
Gabby Bernstein has did you read her book? Um,
Mhm.
oh boy, this
I
is the
recognize her
55-year-old thing.
name.
Gabby Bernstein wrote a book about, healing from trauma, and I'm drawing a blank on what the name of the book is, but, she talks about tapping and all of the things that she used for her healing, and she's got this podcast, so she talks you through, like, a tapping exercise for a
Mm,
survivor, and it's so good,
yeah,
and it's different than
that's
any
awesome.
typical tapping I've heard, like, it's really validating and
Well,
excellent. Yeah,
yeah, because it
anyway.
comes from a survivor.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
which I mean, it's funny you because you mentioned that, and it made me think about the reason why I wrote my book, which is the same thing that you said about why you started writing, right? Because you're looking for books that don't exist. And I wrote
Yeah.
mine for the same reason because the book I was looking for did not exist. And what I realized and what's happening with a lot of us, you, me, Gabby, is that we're bringing you lived experiences and how we've
Right.
done it, as opposed to what you typically find out there, which is much more written from a research or
Yeah.
clinical basis, right? And so you
Right.
get a book that's got all kind of, it's written from all kind of stories that a therapist or a PhD worked with, but you're not really getting firsthand
Yeah.
accounts from people
That's
like
so
us,
such a good
right?
point. That's such
Now,
a good point.
what I think
Yeah,
a lot
it's
of people,
interesting because there's a disconnect, I think, between academia and survivors.
yes.
And, like, they gotta get here to help
Yes.
each other better.
Yes, that's right. Well, that's okay because the survivors, I think, were taken over.
Yeah, I think so.
We're saying now, not just. I mean, I learned. I mean, understanding what the academics have to say about trauma, and for me, survivorship was even huge. I mean, it was like the knowledge around what they say about being a survivor and recognizing myself as a survivor and knowing that I was normal. I love that normal
Yeah.
survivor, which I know is a terrible thing to say, and my audience is probably like, "Well, she did not say that," but I did. But I did recognizing myself as a survivor and what I was experiencing was common enough of themes that it's ending up in books. And that was so powerful to me to go, oh, I'm a survivor. Okay.
Yeah.
And I can deal with this. Right. I
Yeah,
know what it is.
exactly.
So now I can deal with it. Right. So
Yeah. You know, it's interesting when at this conference I mentioned, the academia folks were presenting new language that they wanted us to use at the conference. So they wanted us to say, instead of calling or referring to ourselves as survivors, they preferred the term lived experience. And so for anybody that was a survivor, we were all like, no, we're not using that term. That's not what it is. That is definitely not lived experience is like going to Disney World.
right.
That
Right.
was a lived experience.
Right.
I don't know. There's the
Yeah.
debate
No,
over the labels and you
yeah,
know,
well, I mean, that's all in this age that we live in of trying to be uber politically correct, which I completely agree.
yeah.
I agree with you. I mean, as I am a survivor, and you're right. I mean, lived experiences, and I do use that phrase, lived experiences, but when I'm using it, I'm talking about 55 years of lived experiences, good
Yeah,
and bad, right? So
right,
my whole
exactly.
life and everything that
Right.
I've been through are my lived experiences.
Yes. Not
And
yeah,
so,
it
yeah,
needs clarification.
yeah, and
It
I've
does.
have survived some pretty awful things in my life. So I like the word, and I really love empowered survivor.
I do too. It's
It's just
a great title for
yes, I
your book.
really yes, great title. It's a great title for the community. Great title for it's my brand name, everything. So I really love it because it's on point with what we are
Yes.
coming into our own for sure.
Well, I've gotta read it. I don't have it yet,
So, do you
so
mind if I ask you, because you're an expert in this space, if you were going to give, let's say, two or three tips to a parent right now who
okay.
is listening to this? And I say a parent, but if you're an adult, you should listen to
Yeah.
what you're about
Uh,
to say. What
sure,
would
like any safe adult, anybody that cares about children, be it parent, grandparent, teachers. Well, I would say, first of all, take a sexual abuse prevention training, and there are free ones from sapria.org, all different types. They're great. I just took a whole training and they're short, really full of incredible content and they're trauma informed. So there's no reason why everybody should just go take that. That would be number one. And then number two, I would start early talking about children's body safety, like when they're 2, when they're when you're doing the diaper changing and helping the kids with the bath time. That's when you wanna start talking about it, building the awareness of their body names and their body autonomy and modeling consent and all of that. And then third step is teaching body safety rules, and that also goes with establishing who your safe adults are. So I would do those body safety things. So take a class for you as the adult, start talking about it early, and then really talk about the rules and what it is with your kids. And it's not something you can do that's one and done. So if you read my book, you know, your child might be like, but you actually need to read a lot of books, and you need to read them, periodically, and talk about the conversation periodically, and have this environment for your kids where talking about this stuff is okay, so that if they do get uncomfortable or if something happens, it's okay, and they won't be scared to tell you, and they're going to know it's not their fault, and so they will tell you, or they will get help before something happens. That's the goal. So,
Yeah, which I think is the goal, and what you're trying to do there is amazing as the safe adult. And it's super important because I think back about, my own experience, as I mentioned earlier, right? I mean, what do you say at 5 if you don't have the
yeah.
vocabulary and nobody's ever gone through that process? The three tips that you've given there, right? I never experienced that as a child, and that's not faulting my parents, but
No, right.
a long time ago, we didn't talk about those
Right.
things back
They
then,
didn't
right? I mean,
know.
we didn't know, right? And certainly my parents wouldn't have expected me to go through what I went through when I was that age, right? But I
Yeah.
do think the path for me would have been very different if I would have had my parents talking to me about those things, and I would have felt safe saying to them X, Y,
Yeah.
Z happened, right? And so I
Right.
think that's really critical, and hearing that from a survivor saying that, right? Which I think you would say the same thing, right? If we have that information, my life trajectory would have been much different, without a doubt.
Yeah.
My parents would have had that information when I
Yeah.
was a child. So I think that is, and any safe adult. I mean, I'm referring to parents,
Right.
obviously, not
And
just
this
parents.
is a different generation now. So now these parents of this generation, now they have these resources. So the the only glitch is like getting them to them. Like my book I Said No has sold 300,000 copies, but think
Mm.
of all the millions of people that don't know about it. So,
The number I used earlier was almost 8 billion,
yeah.
right?
So
I mean,
there's
and 2
so
billion,
many
2
people
billion
that
children
still,
whose parents need that information.
yeah, they still
Yes,
don't know.
still
And
don't know.
yeah, so that's why I think, just this work and talking about the topic and bringing it up and sharing other people's work, and that's one thing I'm really big into is collaborating with
Yeah.
authors and anybody in this space, and it's only going to magnify and multiply the reach, because
Oh,
my book might
absolutely.
not be good for, your next door neighbor, but I have a list of 20 books of all of my friends' books, so that if mine's not good, I'm going to give you another one because I want you to talk about it. I don't care if you use
Yeah.
my book or not, but
Yeah, it's the ripple effect of the work that we're doing, right? And
yeah,
I think for most of us, it doesn't really have there's not a self-centered aspect of the work we're doing, right? It's about helping,
right.
and those poor little Kindle faces that you
Oh, I
see
know.
every day. That must be, just to think about that, and must be, I don't know, that would be hard for me, I think, to see
Well,
those
that
faces.
today was interesting because I was at school and everybody's back from vacation, and one of my students was like, Miss King, I slept over my cousin's house for 4 days, and we slept in the same bed. And I'm going, oh my God, like my head just starts going, and I'm like trying to just like get him to talk to make, to see if he needed to tell me anything. And I didn't prod or anything, I just let him talk, and I think it was okay. But like the kids in my classroom get the bonus of the body safety teacher. Like,
Yeah,
they're gonna know more than the average 5-year-old
yeah,
because I have a whole unit on it. Yeah.
yeah.
So
So I'm going to go with that for just a minute. So what is the work to put that into schools,
yeah,
universities?
so so there are laws that require body safety and prevention curriculum to be in school systems, and there's a law called Erin's law. Erin Marin is a survivor, and her life's mission is to make prevention required for K through 12
Mm,
public education. And
mhm.
so her law is passed in 38 states, and she's just going about her life, just pushing to get every state to pass. And what that means is that educators and staff will be trained in sexual abuse prevention, and they will have curriculum for every grade K through 12 to teach prevention. It's not sex ed, it's prevention. So it's
Prevention.
prevention
Right,
resources.
right.
But it's interesting, like Arizona, she just went to Arizona last week, and she thought the bill was going to be passed, and the teachers union kiboshed the something. Their rep said they weren't in favor of the law because of XYZ, and there weren't any resources, and they didn't have funding, and they couldn't put another thing on teachers. And, in teachers, yeah, we do have a lot on our plates, but most of these resources you can get for free. You can
Hmm.
get books from the library that are free, and you can go online and download many, many things from many websites that are free. So a lot of this is just not understanding what the topic is, and I think getting confused with political things and
A lot of
right
things.
now. But I mean, sex ed is definitely needed when kids are older, I think, but body safety is really about just empowering kids to know safety rules and know their body
Right.
rights and speak up. There's nothing wrong with that.
No.
Anybody that would say no on that, I think you got to worry about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually it's their rights as people, as human beings,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Absolutely. So the 38 states where the laws are in effect, how are we doing on actually implementing?
Yeah, so there's passing laws and then there's implementing the laws.
Yeah.
So what's interesting about that is I was teaching at the NACI conference, which is the National Association for the Education of Young Children, and I'm in front of like 100 teachers, principals, and I'm talking about my book and body safety, and I mentioned Aaron's Law. Most of them had never heard of it before. So
Mm,
there is a problem with passing a law and then it's not trickling down and maybe superintendents don't think it's important. So there's many states that do not assess whether the law is being implemented.
mm,
So, but there are organizations now out there following up, enforcing and
okay.
enforcing the
Yeah,
implementation, which is
that's
great.
good. Yeah, that is great. That's good
Yeah.
to hear. Still a long way to go though, I think.
It's a lot. Yeah, because if you pass a law and nobody's making sure you're doing it,
Yeah.
you know?
I mean, I think it's, people probably the resistance to it as well, I would have to think comes from a place of some fear of liability or some kind of recourse against you if you
Right,
don't do it or you do it or you do it in the wrong way or something happens to a child who's come
right.
to, I mean, I would think those naturally humans would have those type of responses as well,
Yes.
thinking
Mhm.
about doing it, right? But yeah, it
But
doesn't
it's
matter.
all really just education, like,
Yeah.
teachers any teacher should really want to know how to prevent child sexual abuse and how to keep themselves safe, because if you're a teacher and you find yourself, like, let's say somebody has a bathroom accident, if you help a child with a bathroom accident without a witness, and the child goes home and says, "Well, Mr. Blah 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 did XYZ with my pant." Next thing you know, you can be accused of something and you
Yes,
might have done nothing.
that's
So
right. That's right.
it's
Yeah.
both ways. It's
Yeah,
like
it is.
really, yeah.
Yeah, it's just any other kind of safety, right? I mean, you want to know how to safely cross the road, so just any
Yes. And
rules
it's
about
kind of like
anything, you
your
want to
what
know how
you
to do
said.
that.
Yeah, it's like you said what your old job was like the fraud and the prevention stuff. So if you know that having two adults supervising children just is automatically a preventative factor, then you should do that
You do that. Yes,
all
I
the
agree with you. You should do that all the time. Yes. That's
time.
exactly right. You should, and you should be inviting it if you're one of those people that
Yeah.
with children, you should be inviting it all the time. Yeah.
Uh,
All right. So tell me then, so children are not going to listen to this because that's not how I put the content out. They will.
yeah.
Um, But what would you pass on to those safe adults in terms of the tips to give the children? The
Tips to
three,
give.
2 or 3 tips for the children. What would those be? Your top tips?
I would, and kids probably would benefit better from, I think, reading a book and then reviewing the things that are in the book to make sure they've learned it. So one of the things in my books, and this is kind of like a tip, I guess, is to do what if scenarios. So with
Hmm.
your child, and this is in the I Said No book, there's a situation that says, like, what if you're on the bus and a friend says they'll give you $5 to show your underwear? What should you think, say, do? So, like, giving specific scenarios to kids
Mhm.
and then
Mhm.
talking through them is a really great way to help kids develop independent thinking, problem solving, and also learn their rules.
That's a great tip. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
an easy one. And you can make these things not even about body safety. You can make it about, like, okay, what's going to happen if mom's late to school? What are you going to think, say, do? Anything. It can be about anything. So it doesn't have to be all this body safety stuff. But there is a lot of research that says that when kids do this problem solving and critical thinking on their own, they are way more likely to remember a solution versus like memorizing 10 rules about body safety.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think what you're saying there too, like mixing up the what if scenarios
Yeah,
around different aspects of their life, not just
right.
focus on body safety. So then you're not, and I would think I don't have children, but I would think if I were doing this with my kids, I would have something in my mind about being so hyper focused on the body safety. Do I create a
Yeah,
fear
exactly.
in my child that I don't want to create, right? But if
Right.
you're sprinkling that throughout all the different things that you're trying to
Yeah.
teach your child and using a variety of different what if scenarios,
Yeah.
then you can help with
Yeah,
that. It's a big
definitely. I
part of
mean,
a
it
normal
can apply to
routine.
anything. What if you forgot your lunch? What, like
Yeah,
what if somebody
yeah,
is mean to you at school? What
yeah,
if, yeah.
yeah. You get into a fight on a playground or somebody steals your
Mhm.
hat. But I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, it's a great tip. Yeah, it really is.
And then another thing I think that's easy for parents to give as just as you're teaching this topic is just to let kids know that anything on this topic is never their fault. It doesn't matter if it was their idea, it doesn't matter if they were copying somebody, it doesn't matter if they got tricked, like it's never their fault. And if they know it's never their fault and they should always tell you, then that really does help, open the lines of communication.
Yeah, I mean, and that I think that's that trust factor, right? Because I one of the most damaging things would be your child not feeling safe enough to tell you what
Yes.
they experienced, whether it's something that's serious or not so serious. They should always feel safe with
Right.
a parent to be able to tell
Yeah,
them.
and I think this is especially important as like kids grow and you're into the teen years and kids have cell phones and there's a lot of mess going on with sextortion where somebody will send a pic and then your child is blackmailed. Sextortion is happening like from bad actors overseas that are like
Yeah,
threatening to share your pictures, and if you don't pay $5,000, and it's resulted in suicides. And kids are so scared because they feel like, well, they're so deep into it, they don't have any choices, and their moms or dads are going to judge them, and they made a mistake. So, like, yeah, getting to that point where you have that open, honest relationship that literally your child can come to you and just say, "Mom, I need help," instead of thinking in their head like, "Oh my god, my parents are gonna kill me." That's like life saving to have that relationship.
life saving,
Yeah.
100%. I'm so glad that's the word that you chose because it is life
Yeah.
saving. Absolutely. Some of the things we've talked about today, going back to when I was a child, literally could have been life saving for me, right? And I've described the work that I've had to do to heal myself as saving my own life,
Yeah.
literally what I've had to do. But I lived with that for
Mm,
years where it did some pretty awful things to me as I was living with it. So that
mm.
literally is what you're doing for your child is saving their life, literally.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that is a great headline for this episode.
Okay, good. I'm glad we
Save your
found one.
child's life, right? I mean,
Save
because
your
it's
child's
so
life.
true. It's so true.
It
Yeah.
is, and, the other thing is, like, you might have to spend a couple dollars on books and maybe spend some time taking some training and then talk about this on and off, but think about the cost. Forget
Right.
about the emotional side of this and the trauma side. The cost of not doing it. So, a lifetime of, the consequences of this. Like, it changes your trajectory. It changes your life choices, it changes your career, it changes your outcomes, your mental
Everything.
health. I mean, like, and then all of that,
Everything.
like, that costs millions of dollars to treat
Yes.
everybody
Yes.
that's going through this. So, like, why not just not? Let's just fix it. Oh my god, I'm
Prevent
so
it.
mad.
Stop it. I no, I agree with you completely. And
Oh,
I don't talk about it in terms of the cost, but what I do say to people is that I was born into this world to be the person who I am. Then I suffered my trauma and my human conditioning that put masks over me, that
yeah,
kept me, concealed me, blocked from my own view the person who I am meant to be. And it
absolutely.
wasn't until my healing journey that I realized, oh, this is who I'm meant to be. And my life would have been profoundly different
Profoundly different.
had
Yeah.
I not experienced the trauma and the survivorship and the unhealthy ways that I survived for so many years.
Yeah. That's such a
Yeah,
good
I
point.
think that's, I mean, there's a little bit of irony in it for me because I'm literally born to be the healing mentor, which means I had to go through all of that, but I'm really unique in that
Yeah.
aspect, right?
Yeah.
And so I am, and I'm unique in that aspect of just not sending people down the path of even experiencing the trauma and the conditioning that
Yeah.
comes with it to
Yeah.
begin with, right? And people's
Mhm.
lives will be so radically different. I mean, think about people that you know in your life as you've grown up and gone through school, and I'm going through people in my mind right now from high school and college and my early days of my career who've just been struggling with so many different, I mean, the outward displays of the ways that they're struggling in their lives. And
Yeah.
I'm guessing the vast majority of them, it goes back to something they experienced when they were a child, right? And,
Yeah.
you know,
Exactly.
quite, it could easily be some sort of a sexual trauma that they
Uh,
experienced.
yeah, and I know in my research I found that the average age someone, if they have kind of frozen and put this in the back vault of their mind, like the average age somebody can recall some of this trauma is 52. And I have met so many like 50 to 55-year-olds this year that have been like just disclosing and reporting and like I'm like, "Oh my God, it really like it's literally everybody I know now is coming
Yes.
up to me going,
Me
"I
too.
just
I hear it.
remembered."
I hear it all the time too. I do too.
Ugh.
It's funny you say that about the average age being 52 because I don't consider myself to be a norm follower by any stretch. I am a complete rebel on norm, but I fit that norm.
Oh, well, there's one thing.
I was
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
I was in my
that's
50s
funny
when I started
is that
coming back.
you fit that norm, and I don't fall into, like, normal categories too, like, I know, like, they say it's you have a higher risk if you, have certain factors, so, like, when you're looking at risk factors for abuse,
Mhm.
they say the best, like, preventative thing is the family structure, like, to have a bio mother and a bio father living in the same house with the kids, that's, like, a protective factor, but I had that, and, like, we still had a babysitter, like,
I
it's
had
a
that. I'm
lot
a
of these
grandfather.
a lot of these risks, I just feel like
Yeah.
everyone's at risk.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah, they are for
I
sure.
wouldn't assume you're not at risk because you're not in a group, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's
So,
right. Everybody's at risk, which we've
yes.
already talked about, and the numbers are staggering about what actually happens. Yeah,
Yeah.
they are. So I've really enjoyed this. It is a
Me
tough
too.
topic, but I am super, super grateful and just proud of you for the work that you're doing to really get awareness out there and try to prevent this
Oh.
from even becoming a thing for anybody to have to deal with. It's truly, it's wonderful. It's made me
Well,
emotional. It's
thank you,
really
and thank
good.
you for doing what you're doing and
Thank you.
sharing all the messages and the
Thank you.
prevention and the healing. It's they're both needed. So needed. And
Yeah,
you said tough topic, so that's funny because on Instagram, I'm Tough Topics mom.
I know you are.
Right?
I
It's
know you
it's like
are.
literally
Yeah,
it's a tough
yeah.
topic.
It is a tough topic, but I mean, we're laughing, right? We're laughing, we're smiling. We've had a little bit of joking here and there, and I think it's
Yeah,
fine, right? Because it is a topic that's hard for people still, but it
it
needs to
is.
not be a tough topic. We need to move that needle to where
Yeah.
it's just something that we're all open and talking about to protect people.
Yeah,
Got to get to that place where it's not a tough topic, and you're not tough
we
topic
do.
mom anymore.
That's right. And that's why your podcast and this will be helpful because somebody's going to hear it who needs it and maybe share it with
Yes,
somebody else and you
yes,
will end up helping 1,000 people without even knowing it. So,
yes, yes. All right. So before we go, where can people find you?
okay, so you can find me at Tough Topics Mom on Instagram and Facebook. And then my website is kimberlykingbooks.com. So you can find me there too.
Yes, and I will drop links to all of that in the show notes so that people will be able to find it
Perfect.
easily. And just one more visual on this, if you want a reminder of
Yay.
what was that book, if you are a safety adult looking and listening to this, please go get Kimberly's book. It's wonderful. And I am going to put it as a resource on my webpage too.
Oh, thank you so much.
All right. Thanks so much for being with me today. I really appreciate it.
All right. Take care. Thank you.
Yes. All right, everyone. That's it for today's episode of Let's Heal with Beth Jones. And as I always say, come on, everyone. Let's heal.
I hope you have enjoyed today's episode of Let's Heal with Beth Jones. If you did, please subscribe to my YouTube channel at Beth Jones Healing Mentor. And if you'd like to know more about me and my work to help other survivors to heal, please visit me on the web at empoweredsurvivors.com.